Okay, welcome back to Finding His Fingerprints. This is Rachel.
This is Katie.
This is Tessa.
And should I say it? We're stoked to be here.
And once again, be here.
Absolutely stoked. I love it. We're going to start off a little bit differently today. We are actually obsessed with Fingerprint Friday.
Yes.
We are.
And we did read every single one of them, and we love them with all of our hearts. But we actually got a question this week that Tess is going to read for us, and we're going to kind of chat about that because it's kind of fun.
Yes. Please keep sending in Finding His or your Fingerprint Fridays though, because we really love them. But the question that we got is this person asked kind of why it's important to go to church. And just like why we should prioritize going to church, why we make a big deal out of it, because they mentioned that sometimes they feel like people act one way at church, but not that way throughout the rest of the week. And it almost appears people are being fake. At any church. And so we kind of just want to start off with our thoughts on that question of why church, why go, what impact does it have in our lives? So what do you guys think?
Okay.
Good question.
It's so funny because we've actually talked about this question and now I have a completely different answer than I did 5 minutes ago. But one of my first thoughts is I've actually been on both sides of that. Like, I feel like I've gone to church and been like this, like, perfect church girl, like haven't made mistakes, show up, like love Jesus, and then during the week I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do anything until I go back to church, and then maybe I'll go back to church. Like, I feel like I've been in that side of it, and I feel like I've also been in the side of it of like, why are they acting one way at church and one way outside? And I'm like, that's so hypocritical of me because I get it, like I've been there. And my first initial thought is just that we kind of talked about is we have to understand, like, why are we going to church in the first place? I just think sometimes we get confused and distracted by other people when the whole purpose of church is to go and develop a better relationship with Christ. And that happens by loving those people around you, whether or not they show up in their one way and then during the week they're another. Like, yes, sometimes it's hard to see that because you hope that they would continue to follow Christ, but sometimes it's hard, you know?
Yeah.
I have so many other thoughts, but
well, keep going.
Okay, just one more. I'm in nursing school right now. I think I've already mentioned that on a podcast.
You're awesome.
And it's my whole life right now, so it'll probably come up more than not. But we had a class and they were talking about compassion. And this is not like a published thing yet, but there were a couple doctors that got asked to test compassion on patients and see how it worked. And they had a doctor that would go in and meet with the patient, and they would just go straight into their diagnoses and straight into their treatment plans. And then they'd have another doctor that would go in and be like, how are you doing? Maybe give them a hug, or maybe just like ask them more about like what's going on in their life, and then get into their like diagnoses and stuff. And they did that for like a year. And the doctor who just went straight into the diagnoses was treating patients with like diabetes, cancer, different diagnoses. And it just progressively either stayed the same or got worse. And the doctor that showed what was just 40 seconds of compassion, that's all they had him do, showed physical improvements in diabetes, cancer, and I can't remember the other health diseases, but there were a couple more. And all it took was 40 seconds of compassion. And I think the reason that comes to my mind is, like, if you went to church with that mindset, all I'm going to do is show 40 seconds of compassion to the first person I see. Like, that could physically, emotionally, mentally heal them from battles that they are facing that we have no idea are happening during their week, you know? Dang. It's like when people say that church is the hospital or whatever. What did they say?
Yeah.
What did they say?
The hospital.
The hospital.
Like, life is
it's like,
I don't know.
Something about sick people go. Yeah. Church is for sick people because it's a hospital.
Yeah, something
I
like.
don't know.
If
you know what it is,
we're all infected or whatever. That's all that's on my mind. Infections. That's what I'm studying right now.
You know what? I love that though, because like an attribute of Jesus Christ is that he's a healer. And so many times in the scriptures, it talks about Jesus Christ being a healer, healing like the blind, the sick, the afflicted, even those who are like spiritually sick, right? And I think that's such a cool like thought though, that when we go to church, like we go to church because we want to experience Jesus Christ, who is the master healer.
Oh my gosh, that just made me think. No, that was so powerful, Katie, because if you think about compassion, there's the scripture that his bowels were filled with compassion.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
to be honest, our bowels are like the nastiest things in our body. This
like
is just
bowel
true.
movements.
This is just true. And like up until the like nastiest part of his like body, he's filled with compassion. Like that's how much love and how much like he wants to give to us. And what's interesting is if he's the master healer and one of his main attributes is compassion, then that means that he's literally healing us physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I don't know if that just made any sense. In my brain, it did.
That's cool.
No, that is
like
cool.
His bowels are filled with compassion. No wonder that's one of his attributes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is like the key to healing people.
Whoa.
Whoa.
You're like,
It's
mind-blowing.
I don't know if that
so
made
funny.
sense, but to us that was cool.
Wow.
No, that is good. And it's funny because while you were talking about like why we go to church, and it's like, I love the idea of us going in to be compassionate to people and like us showing 40 seconds of compassion. Just a couple weeks ago when I was taking the sacrament, I was thinking about everything that was stressful in my life. And then all of a sudden, a story that somebody had told me popped into my head of a really, really hard thing they were going through. And I just had this moment of like, wow, whatever I'm struggling with, like somebody else is struggling with something deeper. Whatever I'm experiencing, like somebody else is experiencing something just as hard or if not harder, and they need love. And so I just remember thinking during the sacrament, like, help me show compassion to these people today and this week, like, because one of them was actually one of my close friends, and I just like, how can I bless them this week, right? And so it's crazy when you said that, like, I just was thinking, what if that's our motive instead of just, I mean, it's good, church should replenish us and we should be nourished out of church and get strength, but what if instead of just thinking, what am I gonna get out of this today, it's also, what am I gonna help someone else get out of this experience today? How am I gonna help someone else?
And not wanting anything in return.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we are like, I want to give compassion, but how come they're not doing it back? How come they're not really living a life with Christ how we envision it?
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, just give.
Okay, just thinking about attributes of Christ, like a
it.
ton. And then it makes you think like Christ is a giver. Like that's who he is. He like everything.
So good, Katie. So good.
Everything he came here to do was to give. And I love what you were saying. Because if that's our motive, like if you think about the times in your life where you feel the most fulfilled, I don't know about you guys, but it's when I've served someone else.
Totally.
I had this experience on my mission. I served in New Zealand, and the first man that we taught who like I saw got baptized, best guy ever. And he had gone through a lot in his life, had a pretty like tough life, upbringing, had just like gotten into some things that kind of led him down a really hard life. And he got to the point where he accepted to be baptized, and he was in the font, and me and my companion were being witnesses, like standing over, like watching as he's in the water. And he goes down, gets baptized, and comes back up, and he like was a pretty like hard, scruffy looking guy, you know, and like his smile was like, you know, like good as well. But once he got baptized, he came up and literally it was like he was like had the biggest smile on his face, was glowing, and he looks up at us as we're like peering down, looking at him, just like giddy, and he says, "Sisters, can I stay and swim in the water? I just feel so good." And
That's
I
so
literally,
cute.
and we were like, "Yeah, take all the time, swim some laps, you know." And
some laps. It's like 2 feet long.
ding, ding, ding. And literally in that moment, I had like a very strong impression, and I remember like my cheeks hurting because I was like smiling, so happy looking at him like have this transformational experience. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the happiest you've ever been in your life. And I just had that like moment, and I thought back to my life, and I'm like, I've had like a pretty good life. Like I've had, you know, like wins in soccer games and fun, like, times with my friends, like boating and campfires that, I like thought back to all these experiences. And then I thought, no, but this really is like one of the happiest times I've had in my life because I got to help someone else come closer to Jesus Christ. And for me, like, that's an experience I'll never forget. And he means more to me than anybody because I was able to like help him. And it wasn't me, like it was like mainly God, but I got to like be a part of his process. And I just think like if you're going to church and living the gospel, looking for ways to serve and looking to be a giver and a healer like Jesus Christ was, you are going to be the most transformed. And it's going to transform you as much as it transforms other people.
Yeah. And I don't know why I feel so strongly like I want to mention this. But I think we see a lot these days, a lot of judgment in people around us, like just in general, in work, in school, in church. Like there's a lot of judgment of like, well, what are they doing outside of church? Like, are they really living like a gospel-centered life? And it just takes me back to my mission. Elder Uchtdorf came and
lucky.
No, I know he's the best.
He's fun.
So awesome.
And he was talking about this judgment that we kind of all have, like subconsciously. And he was like, if someone walks into a church building and they are addicted to smoking or they are addicted to drinking, you kind of know. Like, you can smell that. Like, that's just true about the scent of it. You just know. And he's like, but what if every single person that walked through a church building's door had a sin that had a smell? Like, what if everyone's sin smelled? Then none of us would ever judge each other because we would all smell terrible. Like, that's just true.
Literally.
Like, none of us have, like, lived a life that's sin-free, lived a life without mistakes. And I think about that a lot because, like, it's just such a miracle if anyone walks through a church door. Like, I feel that so strongly that, like, we should just be each other's number one fans.
Yeah.
Like, you made it this week, props to you. Like,
totally.
God is with you. God is proud of you. And we should just also feel that for people.
That's so good.
It's kind of a lot for that question. But
yes, but if you have a question,
no, go. I have one after.
Well, I just keep thinking, I think we should go to church with the mindset of like filling other people. Like, I think that's so good. And I'm like, I need to start doing that. Like, how can I bless other people? But it's crazy. I actually forgot about this until right now. But I had an experience like maybe 3 years ago. It's actually when I was in your ward, which was funny.
Oh, that's so fun.
But
good times.
I was really struggling going to church. Like, I was going, and it wasn't like a question of if I was going to go to church or not. It was a question of like, oh, is it going to be another like dud week where I'm just like, meh. Like, I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of church. And I just felt like I was just struggling. And I remember one Sunday, I was actually fasting. I was like, hey, I just have a prayer in my heart today of like, why do I keep going to church? Like, why do I keep going? Yeah. Other than just because that's how I was raised to go to church and like it's a habit. But why am I actually going? And I remember that day, every single speaker in church solely talked about Jesus Christ. Like, every talk was so focused on him. And I was like, wow. And then every song we sang, obviously a lot of songs are about Jesus, but like every song mentioned his name or like his attributes. And it just was so Christ focused. And then I went to second hour and it was just so focused on Jesus. And it was the most Christ-centered church experience I'd ever had. And later that day, I was just kind of talking to God, and he was like, hey, Tess, remember that prayer you said this morning? And remember what you were fasting for today of why do I go to church? It's so you can get to know my son. It's so you can get to know Jesus. And that day changed things for me. It wasn't just, oh, I go to church because it's a habit and I was raised going to church every week, therefore I go to church every week. It became, I go to church every week because I want to get to know Jesus more. I love Jesus and I want to get to know him as best as I can. That's why I go to church every week, is to learn more about him. So that's kind of what I was just thinking about.
That's so good. It's so good. Gosh, I have had so many moments like that. I cannot sit here. I would be the biggest hypocrite if I was sitting here and saying I always love church. That's not true.
Some days are just like kind of boring.
Some days are boring. Some days you wish they talked about Christ more.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I came to learn about Christ. I don't know if one person said something about Christ. Just kidding. That's dramatic. But I can't sit here and say I always love church, but I can 100% sit here and say I love my Savior, Jesus Christ, with everything in me. And I think sometimes we'll go to church and maybe it won't feel as centered on Christ as we want it to be, but we can still center our lives on him by looking outwards and by loving those people that maybe don't teach the best lessons or maybe don't give the best talks. Like, we're not all, that's not all of our gifts. Sometimes I can't teach to save my life. So, like, it's just like, I don't know. That's just kind of my,
like, how can I show compassion on other people today? Yeah, maybe it's not as Christ-centered as I was hoping, but I'm going to try and learn more about Jesus by being compassionate to them today.
Oh,
thank you for trying to, I couldn't get the words out and you just did
that was good.
And
Katie, you had thoughts. Go.
No, I think that's so cool because it's like you are intentionally saying, by going to church, I'm going to spend time with Jesus Christ today. Like, I'm going to your house and I am going to worship you with your other children. Like, and as you do that, I think then that's how, like, that's a covenant relationship. As you spend time with Jesus Christ, that's how you're going to become a better person. Like, whether that's like hearing something so fire that someone says and being like, whoa, that was for me. Or whether it's like, you know what, I need to talk to this person today. And like, both are going to help you come closer to Jesus Christ. And maybe one like church day is so like, oh, for you, like just the spiritual upliftment you need. And maybe the other day it's like not, but like it is because you make it like with Christ. And I actually, one of our friends posted this about you, Rachel, about like
about me.
Yes, about
Hopefully it was good.
And this actually was so cool about how you make church an amazing experience. And
that's so nice.
Honestly, reading this post, I was like, whoa, this was the answer I needed. Because she talked about how, Rachel, when you go to church, like, you are locked in. Like, your phone, like, no one even knows if you have a phone because your phone isn't out. And like, when the speakers are talking, you're like writing notes and you have something that you're going to compliment them on or like take away from everything that they say. And I've been trying to do that. Like, I think so many times, like, I'll go to church and I'm like half there. Like, I'm on my phone or I'm like looking around, whatever. But I'm like, if I want to spend this time with God, I want to be locked in. I'm going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'm going to take notes. And then afterwards, I want to like compliment the people on specific things so that they, like, giving a talk is hard, right? Like, so they feel like they've been able to do good. And I just think like approaching church in that way, very intentional and very worshipful, is how you are going to have the most miraculous experiences.
That's so interesting, actually, because I don't think I'm good at those things, but that's very nice of that person for saying that. But what my first thought that came to my mind as you were saying that is my grandpa, good old George, is actually everything to me. That's his name. It's perfect for him.
We love George.
He is literally my biggest role model. I honestly don't know if I could talk about him without crying. That's true about me. But he will take notes during people's talks and write them a letter and then give it to them after. Like, that's just so how he is. But then also he writes a lot of books, and he wrote a book called It's My Best Day So Far. And his like voicemail like is like, it's my best day so far. Like, leave a message. Like, if you ask him how he's doing, he's like, it's my best day so far every single day. And I put it to the test. Like, and I don't even know if he remembers this because this was when my grandma passed away. Like, it's probably been like 11 years. It's been a while. And I went to the hospital and I said, how are you doing? Expecting him to finally give me a different answer. I was like, obviously he's not doing good, which is so mean of me as his grandkid.
You're like testing him.
I know. And he said, my best day so far. And I was like, okay, now that's just rude.
Like, you're lying.
Like, you literally, your love of your life is about to pass away. Like, it can't be your best day so far.
Yeah.
And he said, it's my best day so far because I know God has a plan and I know I get to live with her for eternity. And I think that's how he lives his life, is knowing every day can be his best day so far because every day he involves Christ in it, and he knows that he has a plan, like God has a plan for him. And he lives that way where everything he looks at in people is like just to see like them as Christ would see them. And I've tried to like be a little bit better of that, of like less complaining and more gratitude.
Yeah.
In like, we're just lucky we have another day.
Yeah.
Especially this week, I feel like we heard about so many people that have lost loved ones, and like, why can't we make it our best day so far?
Yeah.
Since we get an extra day, you know?
So good. That's so good.
I love George.
George.
Guys,
I want to
love
meet
him.
George.
He was listening to our podcast last week. I probably shouldn't say this on the pod, but he has these little headphones with a little mic, and he watches it on YouTube. And oh my gosh, it's imprinted on my
We
brain.
love George.
Nothing brings me more joy than that
Like
man.
he's gonna like speak back to us.
No,
That's
it's so
cute.
Let's join him in next time.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, he would change everyone's lives. That's just how he is.
Oh my
I love
gosh.
that.
That's so
Nice.
cool.
Well,
Okay, one last thought. I was telling you guys before, but I must talk about Jesus and dating a lot because, like, my Instagram reels are Christian dating. I'm like, okay, thank you.
It's better
like-
than mine. Mine's just Taylor Swift. And I don't even like, I'm not a T
Swiftie.
Swiftie. I'm like, well, I don't even know the name.
A T Swiftie.
You're about to get hate from our Swifties. Also.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's not that I
literally.
don't like her. I just don't.
Just kidding.
I do. Swiftie, please forgive. Take it away, Tessa.
Anywho, but this reel popped up on my Instagram this week, and it was like this guy talking about when he's married now, but he's like, when I first met this girl, I just wanted to do everything to be with her, and they lived kind of far apart, and so he's like, I would drive hours to see her almost every day, and I would give up time, like my homework time, to go be with her, and my friends were like, why do you keep going and spending so much time in this other city? And he's like, ha ha ha, like he didn't really tell them why at first. And then one day he said he posted a picture of the girl, and they're all like, that's why you've been going there so much, and just like all this stuff. But he's like, I loved her, and I was willing to do anything to be with her because I loved her. I was willing to get rid of homework time. I was willing to not be with my friends. I was willing to drive far to be with her because I loved her. And he said, I wonder if we all had that same love for God, what would we be willing to do for him? Would we be willing to give up a little less time on social media to go be in the scriptures? Would we be willing to hang out with friends a little bit, like not as late into the night, so that we can get to bed at a better time and wake up and have morning time with God? Like, what would we be willing to do if we truly loved God? We know he loves us. Like, he shows up in so many different ways. He loves us. He's already putting in so much time to us. And so now it's kind of our choice. Are we going to reciprocate that love back to him? What are we going to do to show him, okay, I love you back. I'm going to be with you today and every day.
Oh,
That's powerful. And I think
love
like,
it.
I mean, we've been talking about church. I think one of the best ways to do that is all he asks of us is to show up on Sundays. Like, and I think like we talk about how much Jesus Christ does for us, and like really he only asks us to show up. Just come and partake and feel and bless others. And I just think if you're not at the point yet where you love church, and I think sometimes it varies. Some days you're going to wake up and be like, I'm so stoked for church. And other days it's like, okay.
Church.
Yeah. But like, then it's like, okay, how can I get to know Jesus Christ even more? Because if you get to know him more, you're going to love him more, which will then be reflected in all your actions moving forward. And I really love that.
Yeah. And you'll be more comfortable with him.
Yeah, you'll want to. It's
You'll
like,
want him around.
ooh,
Yeah.
I really love that. It's like
Okay.
confidence.
Yeah.
It's what Elder Suarez was talking about with like
I love
covenant confidence. When
Yeah.
like you're so
There's just a bug flying around her face. Don't mind.
Like-
Covenant confidence.
Sorry, get a hold of it. Okay, I'm back.
No, it's good. We had to acknowledge that one. That
I
was,
know.
That was a bad one.
Yeah, he talks about that with
Yeah.
like when you are in a covenant relationship. And I was thinking about this because I recently have started going to the gym.
Okay,
Whatever.
Katie's
You
getting
run
the
all the
game.
time.
No, let me tell you, like normally I run or I do like my at home like HIIT workouts, but like I like go to the gym and I like don't really know the machines.
It's
Like,
intimidating.
it's-
Yeah, I
Scary.
know like dumbbells, but like I go and see the machines and I'm like, I don't know what to do with you, machine. Like, you know?
so relatable.
No, and I'm like,
That is.
so I love going with my friends because I'm like, oh, they know what to do. And I'm like, oh, so what you doing next? I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that too, you know? But I've like thought about it and I'm like, why do I not like love going to the gym, it's because I don't have as much confidence. I don't like know the machines very well.
You're not as comfortable.
I'm not as comfortable. And I think like the more I put in the time to know it, to like practice it and spend time there, I'm going to feel so confident that like I can go without anybody and just lift on my own, you know?
And what's so funny with that is sometimes I get into months where I go to the gym all the time and I get that confidence. And then I stop for like 2 months. And it's the same fear comes right back when I get there. I'm like, I don't remember how to use anything.
Yeah.
It's like, so you have to be so consistent with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can we talk about conference and how this is? Because, okay, I'm like, side note, but General Conference is this week. And for those of you who don't know what General Conference is, it is where all the apostles and prophets and general authorities of the church get to speak to us. And I literally am so excited. So it's this Saturday and Sunday. And yeah, we just invite you to watch it because it seriously, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that is the time where I get to have so much quality time with God, where I like come in seeking answers and just the revelation I feel like is overflowing. So
totally,
I feel like in talking about like spending time with God and developing that relationship, one of the best things is General Conference.
Yeah. And it all comes back to honestly that question about church. Like, there's so many people have so many questions and all of our questions are different. My questions right now are probably different than both of yours.
Yeah.
And conference is the perfect place to just lay it out to God and be like, here are all my questions, write them all down. And I mean, I really think I can say I can promise that you'll get answers.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I agree.
Like, I don't think I've ever experienced where I didn't get an answer that I needed at conference.
Yeah.
So
I was just going through journals today, actually, from like around last conference time. And I wrote like, I had a lot of questions going into conference. And for a moment, I was like, man, I didn't get answers to any of those. But then I realized that I learned so much about Jesus and I realized he is the answer to every single question that I had. And so
that's great.
With conference coming up this weekend, go in with questions. We invite everyone to watch it, whether you believe in, like, go to our church or not. Like, we invite you to watch it because it really is a place that you get to spend time with God. You get to spend time learning about Jesus, learning about his miracles, learning about his power. And I know that miracles really can come from that, and those answers will be received, whether it's an answer that day or a week later when we think back on the messages that we hear. But I feel giddy. General Conference is so good. So watch it.
It's like Christmas.
We'll attach the link so that you guys can watch it.
Totally. And just like with church, like be intentional about it. Like come like having thought of the questions, like have a notebook, be in a place where you can really tune in and listen. I think when we set ourselves up in the environment, God is more likely to speak to us. So,
last quote. Then we'll really wrap up. Like, we all keep like,
I know.
No,
this was from last conference, and I want to say it was elder. I can't remember actually. One of the
apostles.
That word.
Apostolos. We're gonna speak a different language now.
Anywho,
some Portuguese.
But he was talking about the temple, and he said, as you change your preparation for the temple, it will change your experience in the temple. And I feel like that's how it is with church. That's how it is with General Conference. That's how it is with reading your scriptures.
I was just about to say that.
If you change how you prepare for it, it will change the experience you have with spending time with God.
And then he says, and it will then change your experience outside of the temple. So like once you like have that experience, it'll change how you are after. It's not just gonna be like a, oh cool, I felt that, but like how you are.
Yeah.
Amen. Hallelujah.
I love it. We're in this with you guys. To be honest, everything you guys are wondering, we're learning with you, and that's what I love so much about this. So
Totally.
We love you. God loves you. And we're out.
Next week.
Peace out.